Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now here's your host, who believes every sports fan deserves seamless digital experiences, Sean Callanan.
I'm Sean Callanan, and welcome to episode 410 of Sports Geek. On this week's episode, I chat with Zach Galia. He's the Director of Social Media and Content Strategy at the Pittsburgh Pirates in Major League Baseball. Thank you very much for listening. You might be doing so on our website, sportsgeekhq.com is where you can find all the episodes and also find out all the work that we also do across the world of sports digital. You can also find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or my favourite podcast platform, Pocket Casts. But you also can find episodes now on our YouTube channel. Please, I'm trying to go to 1,000 subscribers. If you could subscribe to our YouTube channel, I would very much appreciate it. Appreciate your attention as always. Before getting into this episode, I just wanted to check in. Have you listened to our daily podcast, the Sports Geek Rapid Rundown yet? As I just said, it's a daily podcast. It wraps up some of the key sports business news of the day. But I think the bit that would be interesting to you is the way I've gone about building it. We've leveraged AI and automation tools to research, find the articles, decide which articles are the best articles. They go into the Sports Geek Reads daily, a daily email if you want, about 6 to 15 articles a day come out. You can subscribe to that at sportsgeekhq.com. But then the cool thing is we when we edit that email, we decide what are the 3 or 4 articles we want to highlight. And then we throw those articles to Claude, which writes the scripts. And then we throw the scripts to 11 Labs using my clone voice to create the daily podcast. So one, I'd love you to check it out. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/rapid rundown. That's where you can listen to the latest episode. But also, if you would like to know how you can use some of these strategies that we're using with AI and automation to create more content for your team, that's the bit that really excites me in the ability to create different assets, but not require more resources. So if you want to know how we did it, book in a call. You can go to sportsgeekhq.com/AI and book in a call. Please enjoy my chat with Zach Galia. He's the Director of Social Media and Content Strategy at the Pittsburgh Pirates. Very happy to welcome Zach Galia. He's the Director of Social Media and Content Strategy at the Pittsburgh Pirates in the Major League Baseball League, MLB, I should say. Zach, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. Really excited.
Really, we do appreciate you taking the time. I always get started by asking people how they got their start in the world of sports. What about yourself? What was your first job or role in the world of sports?
Yeah, I mean, I'll try and give the abridged version, but
I like the journey. So no need to abridge because I like the twists and turns, and it is very similar. A lot of people go different ways, so I always find some usefulness in the journey.
Sounds good. All right. Well, I mean, so going to college, like I played hockey all growing up. I played baseball growing up, but still loved kind of like the creative side of things and writing, painting, all that kind of stuff. But I never really understood how I was going to merge those two worlds together. So knew I wasn't going to, the MLB or NHL. And so once college was over, I needed to figure out, what life was going to be. So in college, tried a few different things, was an architect for, I think, 6 days until I realized how much books and supplies cost and then dropped out of that. And then just trying to, took a bunch of different random classes to figure things out and found kind of my niche in like mass media and communications and media arts, and loved just kind of the film side and, television, radio, whatever it is. It was cool to be part of and learn about kind of the entertainment side of things. So thought I was going to end up in film school after college, got accepted to film school, then realized how much it would cost and decided against film school. And then ended up with a couple odd jobs here and there. I did a couple sales jobs that were not for me. I was an admissions counselor at the college I went to, was a hockey coach at the college I went to. And then luckily enough, I had a friend from college had a job with the local NASCAR track in Michigan. And they were looking for someone to do some like video work and revamp their YouTube. And so wasn't a NASCAR fan, didn't know anything about the sport, but jumped at the opportunity. And so once I got into that role, probably within a month, my boss kind of came to me and was like, I hope and thought that maybe you would take over all of the social media accounts by now in this role. And I had no idea that was part of the role. So I dove headfirst in and started learning and reaching out to anyone who would talk to me. And, had a lot of great people respond to my messages and jump on phone calls like this just to learn, what it takes to do, social and this stuff for an organization, for a brand. And so from that point on, it's been 12 years now, which is crazy to say. And it's been, still the same mindset, always reaching out to people, always trying to learn and grow. And, spent 2 years there learning everything I could and doing a little bit of everything with, graphic design and video work and photography and strategy and analytics and everything in between. And then parlayed that into the first ever social media role that the Steelers ever had in Pittsburgh. So they had a bunch of people who had kind of chipped in from time to time, but never someone full-time kind of fully focused on this thing. So again, dove headfirst in, 4 years there, learned a ton. I can't explain how many great people I learned from and met and helped me grow over the years, but was able to kind of build and find my footing and find my voice and kind of figure out how to do this, on a large scale. And then, was able to take a leadership role at the Arizona Cardinals out in Phoenix.
I want to stop you. I want to stop you there because I think the pertinent point of that role at the Steelers was that dedicated role. Like even we are talking that's 10 years ago, but there's still teams having that shared approach or managed by the comms team or multiple people sort of chipping in, which does make it really hard to sort of get some. But to be clear across all the channels, how important was that to sort of? I mean, it was you become the throughput and everything comes through you and becomes a high demand role. But how important was it to sort of, I guess, get things aligned and sort of have some consistency across platforms and across tone and those kind of things to sort of have that the one person that that original role, which was that social media coordinator. That person was sort of the key thumbs, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like you said, it's consistency. It's a lot of that stuff, but it's also just having someone dedicated to doing it too, where like social media, like if I have, 3 people on my staff or I have 20, you're never going to have enough to do everything that you need to do. But having someone that's dedicated full time to do this and just think about it and develop strategies and look at, how things were done in the past and how you cover games is as simple as that sounds, is a big part of everything we do in sports. But like just having someone who was just looking at everything that the organization was doing through the lens of social media was key, because there's so many, like you said, there's so many touch points, not only with fans and what you're pushing out from content, but from all of the people within the organization of goals in marketing, goals in ticket sales, goals in the community, goals with partners. Like there's so many different touch points that social media then contributes to, that if you don't have someone kind of like you said, like as that one person or that group of people who are like, these are the people we need to go to discuss it with, it's hard. Like there's not really a good way to do this job part-time. Like you kind of have to have someone who's fully focused on this stuff, and you're always going to have more work than you have people, for sure.
So you went from the Steelers to the Cardinals, also in the NFL, and started sort of moving into those director of social and director of digital content roles. How did that shift from being I guess the person always on the tools and always posting to trying to step back a bit from that and maybe even managing or working with people that are working on particular platforms?
That's honestly, that's what I say to everyone, is that was the hardest transition possible. And like the hardest job you'll ever have is a leadership role, because you go, just like you said, like I went from the doer and covering every game and traveling with the team and doing all of this stuff to then being, the person who steers the ship and guides the people who are doing this stuff. So it was a hard transition of, this is the stuff I'm really good at. And this is the reason why I've gotten to this point. And now I have to learn a whole new job of, how do I make sure that my team is set up for success? And how do I make sure that I'm keeping them in mind of, growth opportunities and making sure that their experience is, all that they're hoping. So it was definitely a drastic change. I don't know that I was the best leader or boss when I first kind of made the transition, because it was really hard. But I think as I've grown and I've seen kind of the mistakes and the shortcomings I've had when I was in this early on, it's, I think I'm getting my feet under me as a leader. And granted, I'm in kind of my sixth year, I think, in a leadership role, and it's still kind of, you're developing your style, you're developing, why you want to be a leader, and understanding, what's important to you, and then figuring out, how, like I said, how do you empower your team? How do you make sure that their journey is better than the journey you went through? And, me being someone who is kind of in social and sports from the very beginning, I can already help, my team with things that I'm probably still struggling with to this day, to help them get ahead of it and give them experience in things that I wish I had experienced in. So that was by far the hardest transition, was going from kind of the doer to the leader in that change.
Definitely, but it also, I have spoken to a lot of people who have been in the role and then moved into that leadership role, and understood the frustrations, understood the times when they weren't heard, understand the expertise that you have there. That once you start stepping away from the tools you don't have, was that something that having that empathy and understanding, what you were sort of desiring to offer when you were in that role, and sort of making sure you can sort of offer that to your staff that are in those roles now?
Yeah, I mean, I think any person, I'm sure, in any department, but like having a seat at the table is everything, right? Like everything you're trying to do, especially in social, especially in content, like you need buy-in, you need kind of the thumbs up from the people who are, above you making the decisions, to be like, we value what you're doing. We agree with what you're doing. Your direction aligns with what our goals are. Go and do it. And if you need anything, we're here. So it's always good to, and utterly necessary to have that buy-in and have that seat at the table. And so that was something that comes with those leadership positions. And then being able to, like I said, empower your team and expose them to those opportunities to, be a part of that table and understand what's being talked about at that table, and really, working through those issues together rather than kind of shouldering everything on your own, is hugely beneficial.
And so now you're a director of social media and content strategy. My time doing podcasting, I've seen a lot of different titles. So I always ask people what the title means, in actuality, and what you're doing. What does your role mean, and describe your role at the Pirates?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very similar to, what I was doing with the Cardinals. Like, in my 3 different roles I had with the Cardinals, it's kind of all of those mixed together into one title. But basically it's, everything that goes out on social is coming through me and my team. And we're working through, how we do X, Y, and Z, and how we're, like I said earlier, like preparing for the season, and, how did we do last year, and what's the plan moving forward? How do we get better? And, constantly looking at kind of the numbers behind everything we're posting, and how do we improve, or what's working, what's not. And then on the content side, working with, our content team and my counterpart, our director of content, and, putting together a plan of, how do we make these ideas come to life, and, working together with his team in mind, and, and working on the nuts and bolts of, you have this grand idea, but how does it come together? How do you put it together? When do you have time when there's 162 games, and how do we make that work? So, basically that's my job in a nutshell, is just, my team strategizes and posts it, and his team makes it and creates it. So it's a good counterbalance of the two of us, and working together on all this stuff. And shout out to Sterling on that.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we use digital dollars, and content is a pillar, and distribution is a pillar, and effectively social is a big key chunk of that distribution piece, especially in the MLB, which is some of the channels that you have a bit more room to play as far as what you want to do. And then from your team point of view, do you have a team of people that are dedicated to particular channels? Do you have a bit of job sharing, or is it a bit of a mix?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a perfect world, you have one person per platform that has, their sole focus is making sure that platform is working at full optimization. But I don't know that I've ever been on a team that's fully staffed to be able to do something like that. So there's three of us on our team, myself, our manager, Jules, and our coordinator, Grace. And basically, we are in charge of pushing that messaging out across all of our channels. So, we split up, game coverage and event coverage and, posting on different platforms depending on what the day is and what's happening. If it's, the draft or the All-Star game or whatever it might be, kind of dividing and conquering on everything so that everyone kind of gets the experience to have, a little bit of everything instead of being stuck in kind of one lane. But that's it. I mean, like it's three of us that are sitting down, like I said, all off season and saying, what do we do well? Where can we improve? And now how do we do that? And kind of putting a plan together for this season.
Yeah, I think it is a balance of sort of having an owner of a platform that is sort of your lead, but also you still want to be part of a team. You still want to collaborate. And, when you've still got a small team, you still want to be able to bounce an idea, whether it's an idea for a reel or something that's getting done on X or TikTok, and how it could be transformed for the different platforms. If you don't have that ideation process, it can get a pretty isolating world if you're just the only person on it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's tough too. I mean, like there's so many platforms now, so it's like every time a platform gets brought up and people start using it, it's like we'd have to hire somebody else to do that. So there's like I said, there's a lot that falls on on our shoulders, but I think we've got a great team that handles it in stride.
So you mentioned your first job was in motor racing, and then you've been in NFL and now Major League Baseball. Vastly different sports, vastly different cadence of schedules and those kind of things. How has it been transitioning between different leagues and sort of learning that cadence and some of the differences, even in the storytelling that's required for the different leagues?
Yeah, I mean, I think, NASCAR, I didn't know any better at that point. So it was all I knew. So there really wasn't, I mean, aside from learning what I was supposed to do, there really wasn't a shift by any means. So, I mean, we had 2 races a year and we had 2 other big kind of events, and then, little things happen here and there. But I always say I owe that role everything when it has to do with me thinking of ideas and making something out of nothing, because there was just a lot of nothing that happened because we were, I was tweeting for a race car track, just a piece of asphalt in Michigan with nothing happening for, 8 months of the year. So, but going from there to football, a little bit more drastic just because it was, 4 events to, 16 events and plus the draft and plus everything else that football has. But with football, it was like you had a week to tell every story. You had a week to either celebrate or forget what just happened on Sunday, Monday, Thursday. They play on Saturdays now. But basically you had a week for good or for bad to tell that story. And so you could really develop your content plan of, what days things go. And it was very consistent in that regard. And, but sometimes, if, you start the season 0-3, nobody really wants to hear from you. And you're, all the work you did in the off season is kind of on hold until good things happen. And, which made it very tough. And, conversely in baseball, we have 162 games plus spring training, plus knock on wood playoff baseball at some point. But it's a bless, for the better or worse, you get to turn the page more quickly. You lose by 20 runs, Wednesday night, Thursday at 3 p.m., you may have another game and it's time to go. But so it's easier to turn that page. It's easier to forget, but it's also that in itself lies the challenge is when you only have, say, 12 hours to say something amazing happens and you want to celebrate it. You only have 12 hours instead of 6 days to truly celebrate what it is. And, if that involves sitting players down or editing some some brilliant piece that's 12 minutes, there's only so many hours in the day before the next lineup comes up and everyone forgot about the game before. So, it's been interesting, and there's been different challenges each step along the way, but it's all, every challenge is an opportunity to be creative. So we just try and figure out the best way we can.
You have really gone from one extreme to the other. And you've got the NFL in the middle, which is every game is a major event because you only have 16 or 18 of them, plus playoffs. Whereas, the cadence and the grind of MLB, is there that? Is the challenge then? How do you do that longer form, longer arc, piece? And is that where you are looking for a trend, whether it's a player on a hit streak or something that's happening that, because those sort of things sort of really pop off on baseball when they do catch on?
Yeah, I mean, it's just identifying and trying to figure out what moments could be coming. And granted, like you said, a hit streak, you never know what's going to happen, but trying to identify those kind of storytelling moments before the season even starts and try and plan for them as best you can. I mean, it's kind of a fool's errand to plan for the future when you can't see what's going to happen. But I think it gives me a little bit of peace to know we at least have an idea of what might be coming. But yeah, I mean, that's the challenge. No matter what sport or what brand you work for, like you want to showcase and celebrate the moments that happen. And whether it's something, like a major league debut, or it's, like you said, a hit streak, or it's, some milestone that's coming up, trying to plan as best you can, but also being flexible enough to know, like, things are going to happen that you're not going to be prepared for. How do you react, and how do you kind of equip yourself for those, for the unplanned? And I think that's kind of the exciting / frustrating part of what we do, is just, you can plan all day, every day. Like I said, I've been planning for 4 months for our season, and guaranteed on day number 3, something that we didn't plan for is going to happen, and we're going to have to figure it out.
Most definitely. I mean, that is sports social. I mean, as much as the fans will talk about that there's a script, there is no script, but there are a whole bunch of people behind the scenes writing many scripts that are hopeful that might happen, and many creatives that are the thing. So how do you get your team to be ready for those events? Like, you want to be ready for those events to be able to turn them around in a quick manner to help your, we talk about digital face paint, to get that digital content out so your fans can celebrate that moment. How do you get that mentality and that ethos into your team?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just kind of, we always call it organized chaos. It's like we plan for everything that we can plan for, so that when those things happen that we can't plan for happen, we can kind of adjust and be flexible and really kind of, let's discuss, let's figure it out, and let's move forward. So, trying to get those processes in place of, when something happens, what do we do? And knowing, like, if we have, kind of a chain of command, or, an email chain, or whether it's Slack or whatever it is, like, knowing how we react to something. We may not know what the finished product is, or what kind of the package it's going to be at the end, but at least we know, like, okay, if something happens, here's how we go about figuring it out. And I think that's kind of as much planning as you can do for that unknown stuff, is just have a system in place that, even if it doesn't work in that exact moment, at least some stage of that system might get you closer to pushing something out that you're proud of. So, but yeah, I mean, it's all like, it's so crazy. And like, not only in sports is like the unexpected happen. I mean, like, inherently in social media, things happen, and, platforms get shut down, or, a platform changes everything that it wants to do and changes its focus. And so it's like, you not only have to be flexible to kind of figure out what to do when things happen on the field, but it's also, just in the platforms you're posting, like, something could change tomorrow that you have to figure out.
And do you, as a leader, like, there are some social teams, some brands that really push the boundary, or at least plan things? Is your part of your role also making sure that higher ups have an idea of, your sense testing these ideas that you might be doing, or saying, hey, if this and this and this and this happens, then we're going to try this type of thing? Is that something that you're trying to make sure that no one's getting caught by surprise, but you're also getting that permission to be creative?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to, like, we were talking about too, is just having a seat at the table and having that buy-in. Is like, that's what we use the off season for, is kind of presenting, here's what we found from last year that we did well, that we did poorly. Here's how we want to improve, and this is the plan for this coming season. And granted, it's a big kind of blanket strategy of, like, this is our viewpoint, and this is what we want to accomplish. So that then, as long as, like, no matter how, simple or complex the idea is, as long as it falls under that kind of umbrella, the approval process, or kind of the, running it up the chain, it kind of limits how much and how long it takes to do something like that. So, you're talking about kind of your viewpoint and what you want to accomplish, and then all of those moments, all of those business goals kind of fall into place under that.
A big part of, any strategy, content, digital, social, is the location. Now, this is your second stint in Pittsburgh. being at the Steelers, now at the Pirates. Tell us a little bit about Pittsburgh as a sports town and a fandom. How much is that, obviously shaping what you do in the role now with the Pirates?
Yeah, I mean, and I grew up in Pittsburgh, so I've been, I've been black and gold from the day I was born. So Pittsburgh is a town that cares passionately about their sports team, and on the social side, for better or worse, it's when you're not winning or you're not winning by enough, the fans will let you know, and the fans will voice their displeasure quite frequently. And when things are good, things are amazing. So, it was, I think that was the biggest change going from Pittsburgh to Arizona too, was, you're going from one NFL team to another thinking like, oh, well, one football team's content, like we'll just move it over to, the desert and we'll be fine. And it didn't work. Like the fan bases could not be more different. And, the Cardinals were kind of not expansion team, but a relocated team to the Valley. So a lot of people who lived there and were born there already had teams outside of the Cardinals. So it was very much, the anger and distaste was more passive of like, if you're not playing well, if you're not doing well, like we're just going to tune you out and we'll come back whenever things are going well. Where in Pittsburgh, that's not the case. That's if you're doing good, bad, or indifferent, you're going to know exactly how the fan base feels every step of the way. And I would always prefer that to kind of indifference.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that passion, you can't, that's sort of what separates sports and sports marketing and sports fandom to, hey, go run social for a bank. Yes, you'll get the same anger sometime, but you won't get that passion. One of the things that is tough when you're in that role, and especially, the doers, the people on the accounts, they read or they read, they're the front line. How do you, and then, and sometimes that can weigh on them. And, how do you help your staff to realize, one, it's engagement, it's passion. Don't take it personally. Learn to step away because you have to put up the final score. Because that's what it is, and there's sponsor obligations. And that the feedback, in poor times, after a bad loss can be pretty brutal. How do you help your staff sort of manage that?
I mean, it takes a lot of practice to not take this stuff personally. And I think I'm finally, for the most part, I think I'm in a good place. I don't know if I'll ever be fully immune to everything, but no, it's understanding that it's an outlet, right? Like, you post the final score even when you lose because you owe it to your fans who've stuck through that game for better or worse, and give them kind of that outlet and that, here's one post. Granted, I'm sure they'll find other posts to tell their opinions, but like, here's a post that you tell us how you feel. We get it. We understand. Like, we're not happy we lost. Like, we feel the same thing that you're feeling, and we're kind of going through this together. So, like for my team, I always tell them, like, if we post something and you see that it has exponentially more replies than it does, retweets or reshares, like, maybe don't read those comments for the day. And, once you're in a good place, mentally, maybe kind of go back and go through. But it's so hard because you need to know what your fans are talking about. You need to know how they feel and what they're thinking, because we are, social media is kind of the most direct touch point with your fan base. So like, if you're out of touch and you're tone deaf and you don't understand how your fans feel, you're not going to be able to do what we do successfully. So it's like, it's that balance. I did not do a good job of not taking it personally early on. And I think, I got kids at home. I have other things that, I'm not digging through every mean comment that gets sent our way, but it's hard. It takes a lot of practice. It takes some mental fortitude to get through it sometimes, but there's, you need those comments, you need that passion.
One of the things I always do with Sports Geek clients, I offer a free service where they can text me whatever swear words they like at any moment of the day when they're getting attacked by fans. So occasionally I will just get a text at weird times, and it'll just be the most filthiest stuff you've ever seen, but it helps them get it out of their system. And so it's much better going and venting to me than occasionally thinking I'm going to reply. That's always a good hack. Just get it out of your system, have a walk, and then it's like you feel better. But then the other thing is, you've also got to, be mindful of, when you have those highs, like you need to say, hey, like that. It's also tough, like you sort of said with the schedule. The next day comes along. You also need to remind your team whether they're having a big win, it's amazing, or a big moment. And you go, hey, do you realize what we're doing? We're on the field. We've just had an amazing. We're in the locker room. Like the reason we're in sports to sort of remind them. They go, just remember this, or take a mental snapshot of this moment because there will be other moments, but this is why we're here.
Yeah, it's you get your head down and so into the weeds, and because there's just so much going on. But it's like, I mean, like I can look out my window and see inside PNC Park, and like, granted, I'm very biased, but like the most beautiful ballpark in all of the states. And like, if my head is buried in my laptop and documents, and it's like you just need to you need to enjoy what you're doing. And yes, I mean any job you have, like across the entire world is difficult, but there's positives to it, or you probably wouldn't be doing it. So it's like, just like you said, I mean, like you're going through the negatives, but make sure to not forget about, the good things that come from it.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, you started on the job, like I said, on the thumbs, and you're always now, everyone's always looking at what's trending as far as what the platforms are doing. We've gone through the, horizontal video to vertical video phase and all those kind of things. But one constant is copy. Like what your content team will produce something, but then between your content team and your social team, you've got to come up with copy. What's your take on, I guess, writing copy and the importance of it?
It's crazy. Like no matter how good the piece of content, you could make or break that piece of content if you don't have the right copy. And like, I think that gets overlooked immensely in a lot of areas. But it's incredibly important. We work really hard on preparing copy, and like even, brainstorming of like player X is going to hit a home run this year. Let's write a bunch of copy as we think of it and as we get inspiration, as we have time. And like, as we think of witty and good things, like write it down so we have it when things get crazy. But yeah, I mean, it's the worst thing in the world. And I told our director of content this offseason, like he made this incredible piece on Paul Skeens and his debut and spent so much time on it. And I was like, man, I've never been so stressed to develop copy for this thing because I didn't want to do it a disservice. And like, that's how serious we take it, right? Like if you are not writing the correct copy to capture someone's attention to then watch or consume the piece of content, you're not helping yourself out. So it's a big part of what we do. And for me, it's, the more evergreen the copy can be, the better, because like,
Yep.
If you say, O'Neal Cruz is good at baseball compared to O'Neal Cruz hits a 2-run homer to tie the game, there's a time limit on the second one. There's no time limit on the first one, no matter what the content is below it. It could be a photo, it could be a highlight from a game, it could be whatever, but that gets shared exponentially more than this thing happened at this specific time. Whenever the next thing happens, you'll forget about that thing. So that's one thing I always preach to my team is like, let's try and think of things that can live a little bit longer than the moment that we're sharing. But again, like just even thinking and talking and brainstorming about just copy for tweets or Instagram, but like, it's crazy to say, but that's a big part of what we're doing.
And again, it's that team effort of, like I use the impro phrase of yes and, like let someone do it and then they can either add to it or give their take, and sort of eventually you end up with something that does hit the mark. And it also goes back to, like you said, talking to, Pittsburgh fans in Pittsburgh and how they want it, and, how down to earth and how rusted on they are. Like that evergreen, copy as a strategy is something that, like, whenever they see it, and then, the algo might pick it up, 3 days after. And so you want that to be useful. So, yeah. I'm a sweat the copy kind of guy as well. And yeah, you're like, at some point you go, I think, we've got 4 versions. We've got to go with one. We've really got to move on. Like we talk about being under resourced, but we've spent 20 minutes talking about 6 words and how they're arranged. But I think it does matter, and I think the good people in social that do a killer job are the ones that sweat that stuff.
Well, and it's funny. Like normally, like a highlight, something happens at the ballpark. You either, in my experience, it's like I either have the perfect copy, exactly what I want to say within like 10 seconds. Or I'm going to be sitting there for 10 minutes trying to think of something. And so like, that's why we call it our like SOS document, but it's like, let's think of all that stuff when we have time. So it's like, if something amazing happens on the field and I don't have the perfect words to, capture that in that moment, we've got 35 options from this offseason. One of them will be better than what I was going to think of, and we move forward.
That's a really good tactic, that effectively role playing in the off season of, here, this Grand Slam's going to happen. What are we writing? And sort of trying to put people into getting into those reps that you're going to have in the season as an off season thing. Look, that is part of learning and growing. What are some of the things that you do to stay on top of things and continually be learning?
Yeah, I think like one website I'd love is it's called socialmediatoday.com, and I'm on it probably way more than I should be, but they do a great job of kind of whatever might be happening in social or even adjacent to social. There's, it's like ESPN.com. Like, there's articles about it that you can read and research and understand. And, LinkedIn's another great place where there's a lot of really good people that I follow that kind of keep you updated on things or bring new ideas to the table, or, just viewpoints that maybe you're not thinking of. That are helpful. And then, TechCrunch is another one that's, it's a little bit more on the techie side, but then there's kind of the social stuff that helps as well. But it's like, there's no wrong answer, right? Like you want to know, I want to know everything that's going on in social, and I want to know everything that's going on in baseball. And then, additive to that, like everything that's going on in pro sports and how it kind of all intertwines. And so it's just, that's always the stress. And like the hard part about this job is like, you're always worried about missing something, and you're always going to miss something. So it's like, it's kind of making sure that it's not gonna, make or break you in any sort of way. But that's it. Like the moment you think, everything in this industry, you're falling behind, because something new is going to happen, something's going to change, and you need to be, as far ahead of it as you can. So it's, it's just doing your best to consume as much as you can and put it in a good place. And then, even on the other side of just like, you're reading leadership books, there's podcasts that have to do with content and leadership and different things like that. So like really focusing on not only just the social side, but also the other things that, hopefully, knock on wood, will make me successful in this role.
Absolutely. I want to touch on one thing there. Like, you can get caught up sometimes in looking at what a lot of other, whether it be teams, leagues, brands are doing. And sometimes that can make you take the eyes off the ball. Whereas if you sort of come back and go, what do my fans want? They're not sitting there looking at other teams in other leagues, in other parts of the world, and realizing they're missing out. Like, you've got, as long as you have your fans at the center, you can always be, I like the phrase steal with pride. You can always go, oh, Manchester United did that. That looks good. How do we do a Pirates version of that? And then when you do it, the Pirates fans go, oh, I've never seen this before in my life. It's amazing. So, like, I think we all grade ourselves quite harshly in looking at, all the opportunities and all the things you can do. But as long as your fans, touch wood, stay relatively happy with what you're producing, that's the key thing.
Yeah. And like, inspiration comes from everywhere, like when whether you're writing a script for a movie, or, you're setting up for, a photo shoot, like your inspiration is going to come from somewhere, and no two people are alike in exactly where that comes from. And like, that's what I always preach to my team is just, definitely look at what other teams are doing and see what is working and what kind of the industry is doing. But like, just like you said, at the end of the day, this is for our fan base, not, Chargers fans or Steelers fans, or like, there's always going to be a little bit of overlap, but you have to do right by your fan base. And so, if someone has a really good idea, let's use that as inspiration of something that might work for us, not necessarily like, this trend is happening, let's do exactly that just with our players, and like try and do things a little bit differently. And even looking outside of sports, like that was something I tried to do this offseason, was reach out to people who run brand accounts outside of sports and just pick their brain of how they do what they do, and what they're looking for, and how they go about laying out a content calendar when there aren't games, kind of dictating what it is. So it's just like everyone learns in different ways. Everyone's kind of inspired in different ways. So it's just, like you were saying, like imitation is the highest form of flattery. And, if you see something good and someone else steals it, or you do something great and someone else steals the idea, it just means that it was successful.
Absolutely. One of the things that digital and social departments do internally is serve many masters, internally, whether they be sponsorship and commercial, ticketing, operations, but then also the fans. How do you help your team? How do you, one, gatekeep, but also how do you help your team get that balance right?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I always say like social's kind of in the middle of that spider web of everything. And it's, every different department has a different goal and something that can be shared or amplified or benefited from social. So it's, again, going back to like processes and setting up, communication lanes that make it easier for everyone to kind of be informed, everyone to give their opinion, everyone to talk through these different things and kind of move forward. And so, I think the biggest thing to always remember is like, we may be kind of the quote unquote experts in our field, but all of these people from different departments that are coming to us are the experts in theirs. So they may not think the same way we do, but that doesn't mean that they're wrong or it's not an idea we should kind of go after and see what's possible. So it's a good Ted Lasso quote is be curious, not judgmental. And that's something that we try and do every day is like, no matter who's coming to us with an idea, like that doesn't mean it's bad, wrong, good, indifferent. Like it's worth discussing. It's worth seeing what might be possible and kind of going from there. But it's just, like I said, it's setting up kind of those communication lanes and processes to make sure that, you know what to do when these things come up and try and inform as many people as possible.
The other part of balance working in sports is trying to have a balance in work and life with the constant, demands of social, that it's 24/7 and all channels are all active all of the time. What do you do to try to step away and try to have a bit of that balance and keep yourself on an even keel and potentially, give the same advice to your staff?
Yeah, I mean, I like what I always tell my staff, like I put your list of priorities together and like whatever that is in your life, I was like, you don't need to share it with me by any means, but like know where you stand because that will go a long way in kind of setting those guardrails, setting those boundaries to make sure that you're not burnt out by the time we get to October. And so, again, preaching from a place where, I was burnt out for, 9 years before I got here. And it's just one thing my dad always taught me is like, there's only one person who can look out for you 100% of the time, and that's you. So you need to be the one that figures out how you can best function and how, you need to set boundaries and how you need to kind of live in this role to make sure that it's not, it's not everything. Like this is not your whole life, right? Like I am not Zach, the social media guy. There's so much more to just me that you need to make sure that kind of all the pieces are in the right place to make sure that you can kind of make those decisions easy. And so, we work in a great company with a lot of great leaders that empower you to kind of do what needs to be done to get the job done. And, they understand that social is not a 9-to-5 job and we have so many things to do and so many games and events to cover that like we have the freedom to kind of step back when we need to step back and then dive head first when we need to dive in. So, but again, like that's the biggest thing for me is just, you have to set your own boundaries to make sure that you're not getting burnt out by the time we get to the end of this.
Absolutely. And you as an org or you as a manager need to say, because you can train your fans to say, hey, we won't be replying to tweets at 11 o'clock on a Saturday. We won't, and say, because, they can't comment on a post that doesn't get posted. So there's no pressure, but sometimes it takes a while, especially when you're new in the role to go, oh, I've got to respond to this. And then it's like, well, if you do that, you'll be replying to fans at 3 a.m. and, you'll be in a fetal position on the floor in no time at all. So yep. It is a matter of sort of setting those boundaries to sort of say, as a team, this is what we do. But we also need you to say, hey, this is tough. I need to step away, to be able to keep them as, because you need to be able to feed that creative mind. It's really hard to do when you are burnt out.
Yeah, exactly. And like the biggest thing is like, I always want to create kind of an environment of just open communication, honesty. Like I can't read your mind. If you're not feeling great or you need a break or you have to be okay coming to me and voicing that opinion and us talking through it because like no one's a mind reader in any job. So it's just making sure, again, setting up those communication lanes to be like, if you need something, we can have this conversation. Don't ever feel afraid or deterred that, it's not going to go your way. Like, let's talk about it. Let's make sure we're all in this together.
One of the things I've been asking recently on the podcast is what's in your toolbox? What are some of the key tools that you're using in your team and maybe your staff are using that help you keep everything ticking over? And it can be, execution pieces, it could be reporting, but what are some of the things that you find pretty valuable?
My favorite, I guess, program is what we would call it, or app. But I wish I would have invested in this company at some point because I talk about it all the time. But it's called Team Up, and it's a calendar program that has been the easiest and best way to handle the madness that is everything going on in our world. So coordinator Grace and manager Jules, they're the ones that kind of used it at their previous teams and brought it to my attention. And it's something like, I don't know if I will ever not use Team Up for anything and everything, but if you're looking to kind of create a calendar, whether it's, just something very simple or it's something really complex where you have a ton of different categories and things need to go where, and it's been a lifesaver for everything that we're trying to do. Cool.
Very cool. And lastly, I want to talk to you a little bit about your journey as a podcast host with the Very Good Social Media podcast. Tell us about that as a project and sort of why you tackled it and what you learned from it.
Well, I mean, it's something I'd wanted to do for a long time and just never had enough time to be able to dedicate to it. But it was something that I learned from so many amazing people. I've made so many connections. And like I said, like when I was trying to figure things out and find my way, there were so many people who were willing to talk and chat and share their wisdom. And so I was trying to figure out a way to do that on a larger scale where it's not just me learning from these amazing people, it's anyone who wants to listen. So was able to reach out to a lot of friends that I had in the industry who were interested, and then even some people who I had just been, fans of on LinkedIn, and who were gracious enough to be a part of it. But it was a lot of fun. Like we're kind of in a hiatus holding period at the moment. My wife and I just had our second child a few months ago, so still living in that world of being up, all hours of the night. But it was just something where it's like that's. When I was talking about like becoming a leader and figuring out why you want to be a leader, and it's, for me, it's all about helping people and helping the next generation get to where they want to go, and whatever knowledge or experience or shortcomings that I've had in my journey, how do I share it so that it's some sort of value to somebody else in there? So that was kind of the main goal behind it, was just, I want to bring as many intelligent, amazing people that I've gotten to learn from over the years to a platform where anyone can listen to them, because without them, I wouldn't be where I am today. So it was kind of the idea behind it.
Well, terrific. I look forward to season 2 when it drops. Let us know. I know we've had your first guest has also been Andy Perelman's been on the podcast. So there's always good crossover, and it's pretty much a similar reason why I started doing the podcast, to try to learn from different people, and sort of how much there is commonality in roles in different leagues, and we're all sort of solving the same problem, but you can always learn from one little tweak, whether it's a tool or a management skill or trending and that kind of stuff. Lastly, before we wrap up, I really do appreciate the time, but what excites you about Pirates Social and what you're planning on for 2025?
Well, I think like over the last few years, we've kind of been we've been building kind of this foundation of not only on the field, but, in our content, in our social, and kind of everything we're doing, just building what it could be and building this foundation. And I think we're finally to a point where it's like, it's time to turn the corner and really see the fruits of our labor kind of blossom, and really dig into all of the amazing things that we've been trying to do for a couple of years and a few years, to see them come to light. So it's just, I'm hoping for, very good things on the field, but also just from our content perspective, I don't think we've been in a better position to accomplish our goals and do what we want to do, and really take the fans on this ride with us. And, like I said, for better or worse, the Pirates fans will be there on this journey. And so hopefully there's a lot more good than bad, but we're hoping to do a lot of really fun things and take people, take our fans to places where maybe they haven't been before. So it's an exciting time here in Pittsburgh.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I want to get to the Sports Geek closing 5. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
Oh man. I don't know if I remember the very first one, but it would have been either a Pirates game at Three River Stadium or a Penguins game at the Civic Arena when I was young. But it had to have been a Penguins game. I'm guessing, but it was probably one of the two. But I've so many memories of like being there and trying to get autographs and coming to Three River Stadium for batting practice. I remember being at the All-Star game in I think it was in the 90s. I have it on my pennant somewhere, 94 All-Star game at Three River Stadium, and sitting in the upper deck and trying to catch home run balls and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, tons of great memories. And I mean, oddly enough, most of them have to do with, either the Pirates, Penguins, or Steelers.
Terrific. What's your, you would have been to a lot of sports events in that time. Do you have a favorite food memory or a go-to food at a sports event?
Ooh, go-to food. If I'm at a hockey game, I really want a coffee that I end up just drinking the whole game because it's, molten lava when you get it. But that's kind of my go-to at hockey games. But hockey, baseball, football, anything, give me the big plate of nachos with, that salsa on one side, cheese on the other, decked out in jalapenos, and call it a day. But that's kind of my go-to.
Terrific. What's the first app you open in the morning?
Ooh, first app. It's probably my calendar, just to see exactly what the day is going to look like. And then it's probably something it's probably my email or it's probably my text, but I would say it's probably ESPN is probably the first app that's not let me learn how to function today. It's just been ESPN.com, ESPN, the app. I watch SportsCenter from as long as I can remember. It's literally on my TV all day too. So it's probably ESPN.
And is there someone that you follow? It might be someone on social, or it might be an author that the listeners should give a follow, and why?
Ooh, I would say a good friend of mine, Amy Keene. She is someone she was on my podcast as well, but someone I've known for a very long time. But someone who just always wants to help, and she's always sharing job opportunities. And when, her and her agency are kind of involved in different things, reaching out for different creators, different, photographers, different, whoever it is, really trying to provide as many opportunities as she can for, the next generation. And she's always been someone that no matter where I'm at or what I'm doing, and if I need kind of a chat of bring me back down to earth on what I'm thinking about this, her and I can kind of go into it and talk through it. And she's been amazing. And the other one I would have to bring up LinkedIn really fast. This new podcast I'm listening to that I posted about today, it's called The Happiness Lab with Dr. Laurie Santos. And it's very much about a lot of things that a lot of people deal with. And the episode I listened to today was about perfectionism and how it can kind of be a bad thing at times.
Yeah.
And so you never think of something being perfect as being bad. So it's been a really cool podcast to listen to. And I found it through a couple other podcasts I listened to, but that's been kind of a favorite of mine. And so, anyone who's kind of going through some stuff and needs to figure out, you're talking about work-life balance and, frustrations and things like that. It's been a great lesson.
We just had a 5-minute conversation on 140 character copy. So I think it's potentially relevant to us on that perfectionism piece, but I completely understand. Last question, and I'll ask this both from a personal point of view and a Pirates point of view. And, what social media platform is your MVP?
Ooh, personally, I like YouTube just because I like going there and with the intention of I'm probably going to be there for an hour consuming whatever I want to consume. It's less of kind of the doom scrolling and I love TikTok too, but it's basically YouTube on a smaller scale for my attention where I'm just kind of ripping through things. But I would say professionally, I think Instagram's been kind of the MVP where it kind of does a little bit of everything. And now with broadcast channels and, there's just so much power within that one click of your thumb that, you kind of overlook it at times where it's just kind of one of many apps that you have to kind of manage, but it's one that has so much kind of staying power because it's kind of changed its focus so many different times. But But that's kind of the one that I kind of gravitate towards most when it comes to kind of professionally. And then, I mean, I guess LinkedIn would be another one personally that I enjoy.
Yeah, Insta is sort of becoming a bit Swiss Army knife of platforms, and the fact that it does so many different things, it sort of it is keeping itself in the relevancy realm for sports because of that. So yeah, and it is a common answer for a lot. Just to timestamp this, we're recording this not knowing what the fate of TikTok will be in your part of the world. So that's mindful, but that's one we will watch. Zach, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Where can people connect with you and reach out and say thank you for this podcast, and maybe check your podcast out? Where can they do that?
LinkedIn's probably the best place. That's where I'm most active and try and share as much as I can and help as much as I can. So, if you want to find me on there, I'm happy to connect and answer any questions that you might have.
Well, thanks very much, mate, and all the best for the season ahead.
Thank you so much for having me. It was awesome.
How is your team leveraging AI to better serve your fans? Set up a call with Sean to discuss how you could take advantage of this huge opportunity. To book, go to sportsgeekhq.com/AI.
Thanks again to Zach Galia. You can connect with him on LinkedIn. We'll have a link to his LinkedIn in the show notes. You can connect with him on X, ZJG, a 3-letter Twitter handle. I don't think I've seen that in a long time. Please, if you do reach out, tell Zach you listened to the episode. Appreciate his insights as much as I did, and say thank you. I really do appreciate it when the podcast audience reaches out to guests to say thank you for their contribution and their time. You can find all the show notes for this episode on the episode number, sportsgeekhq.com/410. Before I wrap up, next week, I will be at Sport Next. It's going to be on March 12 to 14. If you listen to this now and you haven't got your ticket and you're in Melbourne, or you can get to Melbourne, please do so. It's a great way to connect with the sports business industry in this part of the world. There will be visitors from other parts of the world, but it will be a lot of the Australian sports business audience in attendance. I like it for the fact that I do not have to hop on a plane this time. It's held at Centrepiece in the Australian Open precinct, a short walk from the Sports Geek offices. So I appreciate that. Thanks to Lee and the team for inviting me and having me be involved. Sport Next have actually taken up the naming rights of the Sports Geek Rapid Rundown. So as I discussed earlier, our daily sports business podcast leveraged and built using AI and automation. If you search for Sports Geek Rapid Rundown, you'll find it on Apple, you'll find it on Spotify, and you'll find it on Pocket Casts. If you've given it a listen, I'd love a rating and a review. It's still a relatively new podcast, but I just checked in. We've done 70 episodes already. So it's a short, sharp update on the key sports business news that you should know. But please check that out. You can go to sportsgeekhq.com/rapid rundown. But I will see you at Sport Next, and looking forward to it. If you're a listener and we haven't met, please come up and say hello. It's not awkward at all to say, hey, you listen to the podcast. I really do appreciate it. And then hopefully what normally happens when I go to conferences, I find some new and interesting people to become on the podcast. And so if that's you, self-nominations are allowed. But also if you think there is a colleague or someone that you think should be on the podcast and should get their flowers in a podcast form, I suppose, please reach out to me. Sean at sportsgeekhq.com is how you can get in touch with me. Always looking for new and interesting voices to chat to, much like Zach in today's episode. You can find all the show notes at sportsgeekhq.com/410. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
We know you probably skip over the closing segment, but we'd really love a rating or review on your podcast platform of choice. Don't forget you can now watch interviews on the Sports Geek YouTube channel. We're here to help our podcast listeners improve. Please get in touch and see how we can collaborate. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call. All Sports Geek episodes are just a click away at sportsgeekhq.com.